صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ما خاب من تمسك بكم أمنا من لجأ والتجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. On one occasion in Medina, the Prophet of Islam sees a teacher. That teacher is telling off one of its students, and the student, young child, is crying. So Rasulullah comes to the teacher and says, I ask for one favor from you. He says, yes, Ya Rasulullah, whatever you desire, I'm ready to implement it. He said, never tell off this child again. What's wrong? A teacher tells off a child. Sometimes the children cry. The Prophet of Islam says, there's a reason I'm saying that. He said, what is it, Ya Rasulullah? He said, because this child of yours, when he cries just like my grandson, Aba Abdullah. And I cannot bear to hear even someone that sounds like the cries of Sayyid al-Shuhada. I say, Ya Rasulullah. How many times did Aba Abdullah al-Husain cry on the 10th of Muharram? For every single day I have been reciting certain lines in the beginning of my majlis. Today I wish to translate those lines for you. For those lines have been taken from the way in which Zainab described what took place on the 10th of Muharram. She says, As-salamu ala al-Husayn, peace be upon Abba Abdullah al-Madhlum, the one that was oppressed, al-Maqtul, the one that was killed. She would say, al-Majruh al-Adshan, the one that was injured whilst he was thirsty. She says, al-Madhbuh min al-Qafa, for there are two ways to cut someone's neck. The first is to cut the neck from the front. The other is to cut the neck from the back. She says, when they cut the neck of my brother Aba Abdullah, they cut it from the back. Fi yawmi Ashura, on the day of Ashura, fi ardi Karbala, on the plains of Karbala, she would say, bila jurmin wala khata, for no fault or error of his own. الذي غسله دمه وكفنه رماه. Al Karbala, the ghusl of Husayn was his own blood, and the kafan of Husayn were the plains of Karbala. Muqatta al-a'dha'i, when his body lay on the ground, they cut his limbs into pieces. Maslub Imamati wal-Rida, when his body lays on the ground, they would steal his turban, they would steal the abba from his shoulders. For a time would come when the Salatul Fajr is prayed in Karbala. Husayn on the 10th of Ashura, on the 10th of Muharram, is heard supplicating to his Lord, Anta thiqati fi kulli karb wa rajai fi kulli shiddah. Hussein would address the time and say, you have not been loyal to me. Zainab would hear Hussein's supplication and say, oh my brother, first we had to see the loss of our mother Fatima Zahra, then we had to bury Amir al-Mu'mineen, then we saw the coffin of Hassan covered in arrows. Now will you also leave me, Ya Aba Abdullah? Hussein tells Zainab, yes, this is my last day. But Zainab, don't just cry today, for you have a lot to cry after the 10th of Muharram. The army gathers. Hussein gives one flag to Zuhair ibn al-Qayn on the right side of the army. Habib ibn Madahir is given a flag on the left side. Wa Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas fi wasat al-ma'raka. Abbas would be in the middle of the soldiers. The companions would go one by one, first going to defend Hussein, after which Banu Hashim would go to the battlefield. According to most historians, Muslim ibn Awsaja was the first that went to the battlefield. And when he would fall on the ground, Hussein would rush with Habib ibn Madahir. Hussein would clear the dust from the beard of Muslim ibn Awsaja. Habib would say, I am also to leave this world. However, do you have any last request? Listen to the response of a Muslim. What would your last request be? Ashara ila al-Husayn. He said, Usikum bihadha. My last request is take care of our master Aba Abdullah. Companion by companion would go. Sometimes Hussein picks up one body. Another occasion Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas would pick up the body, until the only ones that remain are from Banu Hashim. Some would say Ali al-Akbar was the first to go from Banu Hashim. Others would say he was the last. قد برز إليكم أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا وَمَنْطِقًا لِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Coming to you is the person who looks most like Rasulullah in his speech and demeanor and the way he would walk. He would say, أَنَا عَلِيِّ ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali, نحن وبيت الله أولى بالنبي. أضرب بالسيف أحامي عن أبي ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي. Until a time would come where his body lays on the ground covered in arrows. Qasim would then seek permission and go to the battlefield. He would cry in Tunkiruni fa'ana najlul Husayn. If you do not recognize me, I am the son of Hassan, Sibtun Nabi al-Mustafa wal-Mu'taman, grandson of the Prophet of Islam. Look at how Qasim describes Hussein on that day. He says, هذا حسين كالأسير المرتهن. This is Hussein like a prisoner that has been trapped from all sides. بين أناس لا سقوا ثوب المزن. A time would come, Qasim has also gone. The only one left was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. But Abbas is not given permission to fight. Abbas is given permission to get the water until his right hand would be struck, and then they would strike his left hand. انقطعتم عن يميني إني أحامي أبدا عن ديني وعن نبي طاهر الأمين. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas's body lies on the ground. Have you ever asked yourself this question? Why did Hussein not pick up the body of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? Rather, his body stayed on the plains of Karbala next to the Furat. They say Hussein tried to pick the body once. It fell into 6 pieces. So Hussein left the body of Abbas where it was. He came back with the flag of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. The young girls would come running. Hazawa Anka bought for us water. Hussein says no, his body lies battered on the plains of Karbala until a time comes Hussein is all alone, غريبا وحيدا. Hussein would come in the middle of the plains of Karbala. He would say, هل من ناصر ينصرنا هل من مغيث يغيثنا. He would go to the right side of the army and begin to attack them. Then he would go to the left. Then he would go to the middle of the qital. Hussein by this time is very tired, very thirsty. Aba Abdullah gets to the Furat. Hussein says, I told my horse, you have been very loyal to me on this day. First you drink from this water, then Hussein will drink. The horse doesn't drink. Hussein is about to fill his container when someone shouts from the army of Umar ibn Saad, attack the women of Abu Abdullah. Hussein hears they are about to attack my women. He puts down the container. He rushes towards the tents. He sees no one has attacked his women whilst Hussein is alive. They say Sayyid Mar'ashi has in his wasiyah, in his last will, he said, when I die, I wish for you to take my body to the shrine of Sayyida Ma'sooma. He would say, tie one end of my turban to her shrine, the other to my body. Get someone to recite a few lines of Masa'ib. He would say, but tell them to recite this musibah. Then take my body to the Husainiyya that I have. Tie one end of my turban to the mimbar, the other place it on my body. Get a second reciter and tell them to recite the same musibah. Then when you place my body in the grave, before you cover my grave, get a third. Tell them to recite the same musibah. Which musibah was it, O Sayyid Mar'ashi? Which one did you want to hear? He would say, the last farewell of Zainab from Abba Abdullah. Hussein comes into the tents. Zainul Abidin is falling in and out of unconsciousness. Sajjad sees Abba Abdullah with his armor, with his sword. Zainul Abidin says, are you going to the battlefield, Ya Abba Abdullah? Hussein says, yes, oh my son. Suddenly Zainul Abidin tries to stand. He's unable to stand. He says, oh my father, Aina Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? Hussein would say, Qad Qutil. Abbas has been killed. He would say, Aina Aliyun al-Akbar? Hussein would say, Qad Qutil. Hussein says, let me make it easier for you. Out of all of Karbala, me and you are the only ones that remain. For even the neck of Asghar has been pierced. Zainab places an old garment on the body of Hussein, so that when they steal his clothing, they do not steal this. He puts on his turban. He goes out. The women surround him. Zainab hugs Abba Abdullah. Some say Zainab would say, Hussein, first take us to Medina, then you can go to the battlefield. The women surround him. Hussein prays to Allah, separate Zainab from my chest. Suddenly Zainab comes apart. They give their farewells to Abba Abdullah. Hussein sits on his horse. He goes towards the battlefield. He hears a voice behind him, Mahlan, Mahla ibn Zahra. Oh, son of Zahra, slow down. Hussein looks behind him. Zainab is walking behind the horse. Zainab, I just gave you my last farewell. Why do you walk behind my horse? She would say, I remembered the last wasiyah of my mother. Hussein gets off the horse. He says, Zainab, and I remembered the last wasiyah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Zainab comes forward. She says, Hussein, show me your neck. Hussein's neck would be kissed by Zainab. She would say, our mother said, when you see Hussein for one last time, kiss his neck, for this is the neck on which the dagger of Shabbar shall lie. Hussein says, Zainab, show me your arms. Why? He says, because Amir al-Mu'mineen said these arms will be covered in chains after you, Ya Hussein. Hussein kisses the hands of Zainab. She goes back to the tent. Hussein sits on his horse a second time. The horse doesn't move any further. Hussein says, you have been loyal to me for all of this day. Why now do you not move any further? Hussein looks at the feet. He sees a young girl wrapping her hands around the feet of the horse. So Kaina would say, whenever you go to the battlefield, there is only bloodshed. Do not take my father to the maqtal. Hussein says, I have to go. This is the will of Allah. So Kaina says, I would sleep on your chest. Where will I sleep after you leave this world? Hussein gets off the horse. He lies down on the plains of Karbala. He says, for one last time, sleep on the chest of your father, Abu Abdullah. She would lie down on the chest of Hussein. She goes back to the Mukhayyam. Hussein sits on the horse for one last time. He would fight in one direction, calling out, Allahu Akbar, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-ali al-azim. Hussein gets tired. He comes off his horse to rest. One of the Mal'oon says, I saw Hussein resting next to his horse. I shot an arrow at the forehead of Hussein. Blood began to gush forth. Hussein pulls out the arrow. Someone else would say, I saw him sit on the horse a second time. He goes in another direction. وَقَتَلَ قِتَالًا شَدِيدًا. He comes back to rest. One says, I came behind him. I put a spear in his back. When you have something in your back, you can't take it out yourself. I say at this moment, Hussein may have said, Wa Abbasa. If you were here, you would remove it. Hussein tries to pull it out from his back. The women would be heard crying, Husainan, wa Husainan, wa Husaina, Ghariban, wa Ghariban, wa Ghariba. A time then comes, Umar bin Sa'd says, we cannot kill him like this. Whatever you have in your hands, throw it on the body of Husayn. Ramuhu bis-suyuf. They hit him with their swords. Ramuhu bil-hijara. Someone had a rock, he would throw it on Husayn. They would throw their spears on Abu Abdullah. The books of Maqtal say Hussein would stand, then fall on the ground, then stand a second time, then he would fall. All of the body of Hussein is wounded, for there were 360 wounds on the body of Hussein. Finally you for one last time. He feels weakness in his body. Some say he fell on his right side. Some say he fell on the left. Some say he fell into sajda. But his body did not touch the ground. Why? Because there are so many arrows in the body of Husayn. Zainab says, I realized these are the last moments. I went up onto a hill. I said, Ama fikum Muslim. Is there no one Muslim from amongst you? This is the grandson of Rasulullah. Some say when Zainab would look at Husayn, she would say, Anta akhi, is this my brother? For there are so many wounds on Husayn, Zainab cannot recognize him. He falls into sujood. Zainab turns towards Medina. Assalamu alayka ya Rasul Allah. Salla alayk Malikus Sama. Hadha Husaynuka bil Arab. This is your Hussein lying on the plains of Karbala. Umar bin Saad says, someone finished the job, put him out of his misery. One person comes to Sayyidul Shuhada. He sees the nur in his face. He runs back. A second would come and run away. Shimr says, I will finish the job. He comes towards Abu Abdullah. He kicks Husayn ibn Ali. He takes out a dagger. Zainab says, will you sit on the chest of my brother? Listen to what Shimr does. He stabs Husayn 12 times. He turns him on his front. He takes out a sword. He cuts the head of Abu Abdullah. Jibreel comes down. Ala qad qutila al-Husayn. Ala qad dhubiha al-Husayn.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.